Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of the national interest and also to offer further reassurance to the markets, can the Leader of the House just confirm that the Prime Minister will not be taking any decisions on economic policy in the future?
Sir Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the House has mentioned a couple of times now that the Prime Minister has taken difficult decisions. Can I please enlighten her that these are not difficult decisions? Difficult decisions are what are facing our constituents, choosing whether they can actually turn the lights on, finding out how they can heat their homes and how they can feed their children. Don't our constituents and those people deserve an answer from our Prime Minister and not an answer about just saying our Chancellor will come and tell us later?
Jess Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I find it absolutely incredible that the Leader of the House is incredulous that people might want to hear from the Prime Minister. As if it's like, a political game to ask the leader of our country questions. It is an embarrassing thing to assert. But in the national interest, and she so wants to hear from the Chancellor, can I ask her to be completely honest, because nothing that we've seen has been honest. I apologise. Can I ask her why the markets needed reassuring?
Mara Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, the value of the pound fell after the Prime Minister walked out after just over 8 minutes from her press conference. Isn't it increasingly the case that she and her government are a risk to Britain's financial stability? And isn't it time she stopped shirking, turned out to be held accountable, or get out of the way and call a general election?
She has claimed repeatedly that the Prime Minister has been courageous. But if the Prime Minister were really courageous, she would be here today, wouldn't she? If the Prime Minister cannot or won't come and explain to the British people the reasons for her humiliating U-turns and to apologise to them, as she just did from the dispatch box, for the damage the Tories and she have done to this country and living standards and businesses, what is the point of her?
Mandeep Singh Desi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister repeatedly declared that she was working in lockstep with her Chancellor, but then very unceremoniously dumped her closest political friend at the earliest possible opportunity in order to temporarily save her job. And now, in the greatest of ironies, she has sent out the very right honourable lady to speak on her behalf, who is very desperately seeking to replace her. Leader of the House, I understand that Downing Street is hosting a reception this evening. Is it awake?
Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to be clear. Can the Leader of the House confirm then that the former Chancellor has been removed by the Prime Minister for acting on her instructions? And can she also confirm that the Prime Minister overruled the former Chancellor in the contents of the financial statement before it was made? Because if both things are true, the Prime Minister needs to resign, doesn't she?
Can I ask the Leader of the House, on behalf of the Prime Minister, will she simply say to the people of this country, we are sorry?
Clive Ethel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're told that the Prime Minister is going to be coming in here in a moment to join the Chancellor when he makes his statement, presumably propped up El Cid like Jolton Heston. But this should have been an opportunity for the Prime Minister to show leadership and to apologise to the nation before the dispatch box in the chamber of the House of Commons. Yet she's failed to do so. We've all heard the stories about our constituents up and down the country who have had mortgages withdrawn at the last minute, whose lives have been put on hold because of the reckless mini-budget that she agreed with her Chancellor. So doesn't the Leader of the House agree that it is reckless of the Prime Minister to not show that leadership today and be here in this chamber to be accountable for what she has done?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The fact is that the Prime Minister was as courageous as the Leader of Search should be here answering questions this afternoon. The fact that the Prime Minister is unwilling to come to the House shows the complete lack of authority she now has, week before the country, week before Parliament and week before the markets. Refusing to face parliamentary accountability for actions is not cowardice, it's a dereliction of duty. Does Leader of the House not agree with me? It's well past time for this lame duck Prime Minister to go.
Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To be honest, I just thought it was utterly shabby to sack the Chancellor of the Exchequer for doing precisely what he'd been told to do by the boss. It's like when you sack the staff for messing up yourself. It's not on. It's bad form, it's not honourable, it's despicable. But what really worries me is that you can't really govern if you don't have a mandate. You can't govern if you can't get your budget through this House, because by definition that shows that the House does not have confidence in you. Every honourable government previous to this, at that moment when it's evident that they couldn't get their budget through, has resigned and allowed a general election. Isn't that what should happen now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Lady has said many times that the Prime Minister couldn't come here for a specific reason at this time. So could I ask the Leader of the House, is there a reason why the Prime Minister decided she didn't want to make a statement to the House? Because she could have chosen any time to do that, even at 10 p.m. Does the Leader of the House not think that we as elected MPs and the public in this country deserve to hear from the Prime Minister?
Whether she's under her desk or behind a couch, people rightly view the Prime Minister's sacking of the Chancellor as a particularly unedifying act of self-preservation, given that he was thrown under the bus for saying exactly what she asked him to say. It would be like the ventriloquist Ray Allen sacking Lord Charles for saying the wrong thing. So will the Leader of the House join me now in asking the ventriloquist dummies on her own benches who demanded that the Scottish Government follow this insane economy-wrecking policy to apologise to the people of Scotland?
Christian Wakeford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With her economic plan much like a judgment in tatters, the fact she can't even be bothered to come to the chamber today, what is the point of the Prime Minister?
Stephanie Peacock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister on the way to the palace?
The markets were spooked not just by the reckless mini-budget, but also by the sense that we had a Prime Minister incapable of answering questions at the end of a press conference and without any sort of grip on this government. So it is entirely legitimate for my right honourable friend from Holborn St Pancras to give her an opportunity to come and assure the markets. Isn't the reality that the Prime Minister's inability to answer questions is just as fundamental as the failure on policy in why this country is now in an economic crisis?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I accept what the Right Honourable Lady is saying about the Prime Minister not being here, that there may be a very good reason. And I also agree with her when she said frequently that we must be acting at the moment in the national interest. For me, the national interest is what is in the interests of our people, our constituents. And what they are telling me in Edinburgh West, and I'm sure very many of the rest of you, is that they no longer have any confidence in this Prime Minister. That while she may have had the courage to sack her partner in presenting the growth plan for the country, that what they would like is for her now to have the courage to accept that she was also wrong and to step down. So will the Right Honourable Lady and her Cabinet colleagues please take that message back to the Prime Minister wherever she is?
Speaker, as the new Chancellor has reversed all the economic promises made by the Prime Minister in her election campaign to become Prime Minister, and that very Chancellor had the fewest votes in that leadership election, he was thrown out with 18, doesn't this show that the next Prime Minister should not be chosen by the members opposite and their wider membership, but by the British people in a general election as soon as possible to get this country back on track?
Matt Weston.
Speaker, obviously this is an absolutely legitimate question that's been put forward today. The public wants to know why the Prime Minister sacked her Chancellor after just 38 days, and particularly given that she was co-architect of the plans, the economic plans, why she herself has not resigned.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The pound is falling off a cliff, interest rates are soaring, inflation is rocketing, and pensions have been on the verge of collapse. We have a new Chancellor who is the de facto Prime Minister, and a Prime Minister who has been reduced to a spectator as her own MPs plot her removal. The Honourable Lady today, the Leader of the House, has defended the Prime Minister today, but can I ask her, does she think if she had won the leadership contest, she would have been a better Prime Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Local public services in Warrington have been slashed to pieces over the last 12 years, and we are finding it increasingly difficult to meet the demand for basic statutory services, let alone before inflation started rocketing, pushing costs of delivery up. Any more cuts will mean collapse. The Prime Minister spent last week promising no cuts to public spending and boasting about her 2-year energy price freeze. So does she have any say at all on government economic policy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been in office for 6 weeks, but notoriously, even with the rigours of the budget, has yet to find time to call the First Minister of Scotland or the First Minister of Wales. Does the Leader of the House think that the Prime Minister will remain in office long enough to be able to do so?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the markets will be reassured to see the Prime Minister is not hiding under a desk, but is here in the House today. She's still got till 10 o'clock tonight to answer questions that have been asked if she wants to reassure the markets and create some stability. But I've got another question for the Leader of the House. I've been drawing in Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. Can she guarantee that the current Prime Minister will be answering them?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throwing your Chancellor under the bus in order to save your skin is not a tough decision. Tough decisions are when you make them and then come along, show true leadership and ask people to come with you by inspiring them. This Prime Minister has done none of that. So why should we follow her when she has shown no leadership whatsoever but has hidden away?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Urgent business, we are told by the Leader, prevented the Prime Minister from coming to the House. What on earth could have been more urgent than coming to atone for the economic chaos that she has wrought on pension holders and mortgage payers across these islands, and especially in Scotland, where the party opposite enjoy no mandate whatsoever? The Prime Minister thanked her former Chancellor for the excellent work that he had done. Can the Leader of the House explain, or maybe now the Prime Minister's turned up, she can the Leader of the House explain, thanked for what?
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. On a point of order, you know that for the last hour we've been listening to questions about which were meant to be directed to the Prime Minister. The Leader of the House said repeatedly that there were reasons that the Prime Minister couldn't be here. If there were legitimate reasons, I'm sure every single member of this House would want to hear them. Now that the Prime Minister has arrived, would this not be a perfect opportunity for her to be able to explain why she was not able to do it?